The Atomic Deck by Craig Petty and Murphy's Magic has a huge amount of hype around it, and many are calling it the holy grail of any card at any number. But there has also been a lot of controversy around this effect. Is this really the best of them all? Today, we're going to find out. So this is what you're going to get. It's the Murphy's Classic box. It's a little bit smaller than the typical Murphy's box, but you'll get this package, and inside you're going to get this. This is your Gimmick deck, the Copperheads playing cards. And they're red, standard, and here's what they look like up close. As you can see, the faces are standard, but the backs are not. The backs are not bicycle. They are Copperhead, which looks a little bit like bicycle, but they don't look exactly the same. These are pretty high quality playing cards, so let's get back to the review. If you find this review of the Atomic Deck helpful, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. And hit the like button while you're at it. Now, what do you get when you purchase this? When you purchase the Atomic Deck from Murphy's Magic and Craig Petty for $50 US, you get your Atomic Deck box in the classic Murphy's Magic packaging. And inside, you'll get your sealed deck of Copperheads playing cards. I already showed you this, I think, but this is the deck. And they are all specially gimmicked. You'll also get your video tutorial. Now, what's the quality of the Gimmick? The Gimmick is very interesting. The cards aren't bicycle. They are Copperheads, as you know. And the whole deck is completely gimmicked. There are quite a bit of things going on with it, and it's a whole complex system. The cards do have a component to them that is a little bit similar to the Quantum Deck by Craig Petty as well, which was released a few years back. But it's totally different because the cards were made in a bit of a different way. Instead of applying the system after the cards were printed, there's a way that the cards are actually printed with the system on it, which is really crazy. The cards feel good though, they handle well, and they should last you a while, but you should be a bit careful so you don't bend or damage them, because with these, even if you put in a slight bow or crimp, it's pretty hard to get it out. If you're not careful, if it's humid, if the cards are sticking to your hands or something, and you deal it off and they bow, that would leave a permanent crimp. Of course, you can probably flatten it out, but still, I'd recommend that you be safe and you are a bit delicate with the deck. And the fact that the cards are Copperhead, that's a slight con. I wish they would have been bicycle. I don't know if lay people would care, but the reason I don't love that it's not bicycle is it would be harder to switch this deck of cards in, because since it's not bicycle, you can't just do a deck switch and bring this out. You have to introduce this as a completely new deck of cards with a prediction. Now, personally, I found that one of the components on my deck of cards was slightly under added. So I needed to apply some of my own version, some that probably everyone has at home, to the deck of cards, and that has strengthened that component and made it perfect. Now, how's the tutorial? The tutorial's great. What I like is that they added a quick, I think around 6-minute tutorial for you to learn the trick if you don't want to watch the whole thing. The whole thing, I think, is more than 5 hours. I could be wrong, but that includes all the live performances, the different methods, the theory, and all that stuff. Now, there is a 10% chance that this won't work. It works 90% of the time. But even when you do come across that 10% chance, there are ways to get around it, as shown in the tutorial. And the tutorial is great. It's Lloyd and Craig Petty. They go through a lot of stuff. They go through the theory. They go through the reasons why they designed the deck in certain ways. And they go through a lot of different subtleties and even some different handlings or outs that you may need to use. Now, one thing that a lot of people have been complaining about on the Magic Cafe is that you need to use a phone. And it's true. You do need to use a phone because the phone does the math. This deck of cards has a system so complex that you couldn't possibly do it in your head. You need the phone to do it. The good news is the reason you're using the phone is justified. I'll get into it in a moment, but it is justified. You give a reason you're using the phone, and as long as you present it well, I don't think it could cause too much suspicion. Now, you do need the phone to do it. I know Craig is going to be adding a voice recognition and some other cool updates soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But a good thing is the phone isn't playing too big of a role in the effect. The two ways you can currently use it is there's a statistical website that gives the odds that the spectator's named card is going to go to their named number. And when you click it, that's going to show you everything you need to know. And the audience thinks you just did that to prove how impossible the trick is. The other one is a notes app, and it works for Android or iPhone. Both work for Android or iPhone. You just put into your supposed notes app, you put in the card, put in the number, and you do that under the guise of putting it there so spectators don't forget what they said initially. And honestly, I think I prefer the website one a little bit more. I like both of them, but I think I like the website one a little bit more because you can do it on your spectator's phone. Another thing with this is they can't deal the cards out themselves. The magician has to deal the cards out themselves. So those are two slight drawbacks, that you have to deal it yourself and the fact you need a phone. However, the fact that you can do it with the phone allows for even more possibilities. For example, if you do it on your spectator's phone, they can just tell you the percent and the number to deal down to. They don't even tell you the card. They're just thinking of the card, and the card's at that number. So then you go from an any card at any number to a thought of card at any number. And also, the fact that you can use a phone is great because you can get everybody in the audience involved. You can have everyone pull out their phone and then all stand up, and then a random person gets chosen. So that's great. Now, what are the angles like? This can be performed surrounded. Are there live performances? Yes, there are live performances in the tutorial. Is this examinable? Okay, so this is an interesting question, and I personally would be okay handing this out to people, especially lay people. The cards don't feel too out of the ordinary, and it's not like there's anything too bad that they can find, nothing too incriminating. For magicians, I think I could hand it out, but I would be a bit more cautious with magicians, because if they handle the deck of cards for too long and start inspecting the cards individually, that would not be good at all. Now, let's talk about the difficulty and practicality of the effect. It's not difficult to do at all. In fact, it's very, very easy. The deck and the phone do a lot of the work for you. And another thing to keep in mind is that if you live in a place with low humidity and you have super dry skin all the time, you may have a little bit of a hard time performing this, because you do need to be able to handle the cards well. And if you have super dry hands, and I want to rephrase it, you don't need to handle the cards well. What I mean is you need to be able to deal the cards in a specific way. It is super easy to do, so don't get scared. All you have to do is be able to deal the cards, but it's a little bit slightly harder if you have super dry hands. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that there are some variations in the way you have to deal the cards. For example, depending on the situation, you may have to deal the cards from the top. You may have to deal the cards on the bottom. You may have to deal the cards in a different way as well. And the orientation of the deck when you're dealing it, when you're dealing to their number, can cause changes in the length of the reset. I'll get back to that in a moment. It's complicated to explain. Now, is there any DIY? There isn't any DIY required. The cards come ready to go. Pocket space. This is a gaffed deck. It's the same size as a regular deck of bicycle cards, so you will have to carry around the deck of cards just for this trick. So keep that in mind. Now, what is the reset like? This depends, as I mentioned, on the situation. 75 to 89% of the time, the reset is instant. You just put the cards together and put them back in the box. However, around 1 to 2% of the time, you will have to reset the cards later on, which can take about 20 to 30 seconds. So again, the majority of the time, the reset is instant. The other times, it's not instant. It will take a little bit of time. And the remaining percent of the time, which is around 10%, that is when it doesn't work initially, so you have to do the workaround, and then the reset is possibly instant again, or it could be around 30 seconds. So the reset is pretty hard to explain. Sorry if you don't get it, but I think that's the best way I can put it. If you have this, you know what I mean. Another great thing is that the cards are marked with the card and the position. So right before you turn over their card, you have confidence and you know for sure that their card is there. It also helps so if you drop the deck of cards, you can put them all back in position. Now, is the trailer and ad copy accurate? I'd say it's pretty accurate for the most part. They are pretty transparent as well that you need a phone. The only thing I didn't like too much is I don't want to get too deep into it, but they say no roughing fluid. There's no roughing fluid, but there is something very similar. So keep that in mind. Now, what is the price of this? This costs $50 US. For the materials you get, as with most magic effects, this is a bit expensive. But if you plan on performing this on real people, you will likely get your money's worth. Now, is this the best ACAAN of all time? In my opinion, the best ACAAN for me is AC wins any card at any number. It does require a memorized deck, so it definitely won't be for everyone because it also requires a pretty difficult move. If you can't or don't want to require a memorized deck, if you don't want to memorize a deck, I think this is pretty much as close as you can get to a burgless effect. But it does use the phone. So as long as you separate the phone as much as you can from the trick itself, then the phone will probably be forgotten about as long as you separate it from the deck of cards. The deck is isolated from the very beginning. I personally think all the controversy over this deck of cards is overblown because as I said, you can separate the phone from the deck. I mean, the deck is on the table. How could people even think that the phone is connected to the deck in any way? And it's part of the presentation as well. You're presenting that on your phone. You're bringing up how impossible the trick is by showing the statistics. Or if someone has a bad memory, you could simply ask, do you have a good or bad memory? If someone says bad memory, you can say, hey, let's put it on the phone then so you remember it later on. Or if they have a good memory, you can just go with the website presentation and say, it's so impossible. There's less than a 0.1% chance. The odds are so low, yet somehow let's deal to the number. And it happened despite the odds being so low. Yeah, I'm going to bring up something that has been mentioned as well with the atomic deck. And that is that there are so many different methods to do ACAAN, and there are many that work, like rough and smooth, Svengali decks, duplicates, controls, they all work. I agree with the sentiment that people have, that there are already so many methods that work, so why do we need another one for what some people are saying is a not that good trick, any card at any number? First of all, I disagree. I think any card at any number is very strong because it's a super direct piece of mentalism. And what I like about this that disproves those people's arguments is that there's never been an any card at any number that's so fair, that has such a wide range of cards and numbers they can name, other than AC wins. AC wins, they can name any card and literally any number without any restrictions. This has 90% of the cards and numbers combinations work 100%. So this has a 90% chance that the first card and number they're going to name, it's going to work. And that is a huge range of cards and numbers. That's great. Now, what are the pros and cons? The pros are there's no math. ACAAN is so strong, you don't touch the deck once it's tabled. It works with any named card and number 90% of the time, which is the vast majority. And there are ways to get around it, even if it doesn't work. The deck's examinable. You can put the cards in the spectator's hands. The cards are marked. This seems very fair. The tutorial's good. There's a 6-minute quick tutorial included. There are multiple ways to justify using a phone. The method is so clever and complex. There's no sneaky moves. There's no sleight of hand. It's super easy to do. There are ways to do it with the spectator thinking of a card. It works on stage as well because you can have everyone's phone. And there's many more. As for the cons, I guess you do need to use a phone as you can't do the math in your head. It's just too complicated. The cards are also a little bit delicate, so you will want to be careful so you don't bend them or crimp them. There's also a material that can wear out over time, but it's easily replaceable. The material that was used also could have been slightly stronger. And about 10% of the time, you will have to tell them to change their mind or randomize it, because certain permutations don't work. You also won't always deal from the top. Sometimes you'll have to deal from the face. Sometimes you'll even have to necktie the deck towards you. Around 75% of the time, you deal right from the top. 14% of the time, you deal from the face. And around 1 to 2, I'd say, percent of the time, it might be even less, you'll have to necktie the deck. Now, what percent am I giving this project? I'm giving the atomic deck a 94%. I think it is an incredibly strong routine because there's such a wide range of numbers and cards that can be used. And when presented properly, it feels like magic because the deck is isolated. You can have it wrapped up in tape, or wrapped up and locked up. And then you have them name a card, name a number, show on the phone how impossible the trick would be, and then unwrap it, deal to their number, so it's their card. I understand for those of you who don't like that this is not a bicycle deck and that you have to use a phone. I totally get it. But as long as you present it in a certain way as to you're using the phone to amplify the effect, or you're using the phone to make up for the spectator's bad memory, as long as you do that, I honestly don't see too big of a problem. But that's it for this review. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.